Marcus came back on a Thursday. Not by text, not by phone call that she could observe lighting up her screen and decide to ignore while eating a protein bar and staring at the wall. He came in person to her building, stood in the lobby and asked the front desk to let her know he was there. Desperate was the word that came to mind. The move of a man who had exhausted less revealing options and arrived at the one that required the most of him. Zara was upstairs in her apartment, fresh off a client call, red hair loose around her shoulders, wearing a cream blouse and wide-leg trousers because she had plans for the evening. She read the message from the front desk on her intercom screen. She stood still for 7 full seconds. Then she pressed the button and told them to send him up. She did not rearrange anything in the apartment. She did not fix her hair. She sat down on the gray couch with both feet flat on the floor and her hands in her lap, and she waited. He knocked. She opened the door. He stood in her doorway looking like a man who had rehearsed this conversation many times and was discovering only now, in this actual doorway with this actual woman in front of him, that rehearsal and reality are two entirely different experiences. His blonde hair had grown out a little. His eyes carried the specific weight of someone who has not been sleeping well and understands exactly why. She stepped back and let him in. She did not offer coffee. He sat on the edge of the chair across from the couch. She sat on the couch. The bare coffee table sat between them exactly as it had on the night she had ended everything. He told her he was sorry. She told him she had heard that word from him before. He said he knew that this was different, that he had ended things with Jessica completely 2 months ago and that it was fully over. He said he had sat with what he had done, with all of it, and there was no version of it that he could construct an excuse around, and he was not going to try. He said he had been selfish in the most ordinary and damaging way. He said she had deserved better than what he had given her while she was busy giving everything she had to the life they were supposed to be building side by side. He said he wanted to come back. That he believed they were worth trying again. The apartment was quiet around them. Zara listened to every word with the attentiveness of someone who was receiving information carefully and filing each piece of it away. She asked whether Jessica knew he was there. He said yes. That it had been completely over for 2 months. That there was nothing there and had not been. She nodded slowly, looked at the coffee table, then back at him. She said she needed time to think about it. He said of course whatever she needed. She told him she would call him. He stood. He went to the door. He turned back and looked at her one more time with the expression of a man who is handing something fragile to someone and hoping they will hold it carefully. She gave him nothing in return. Just looked at him with calm, unreadable eyes until he left. The door closed. She sat with the silence for 2 minutes. Then she picked up her phone and sat with her own thoughts a while longer. Because here is what the narrator needs to say plainly before this story goes any further. Zara James did not forgive Marcus. Not in the private place where the truth lives and does not negotiate. She remembered everything. The tired face emoji. The 6 weeks. Jessica's hand on his collar. The ring sitting on the kitchen counter. The way he had let her build and plan and pour herself into their future while quietly choosing something else. She held all of it with the precise, unblinking memory of a woman who had cried for 40 minutes and then opened her laptop and decided that grief was not going to be the final sentence. What she had decided in those 4 days between his visit and the phone call she made was something more deliberate than forgiveness. She had decided to let him believe he had it back. The relationship. The future. Her. She was going to let him exhale. Let him plan and hope and tell his family and watch her mother's eyes fill up with happy tears. She was going to give him exactly enough to hold so that when the moment came, what she took back would mean something. Amber was the only person who knew. Amber had known from the first phone call. 3 weeks after the reunion, they sat across from each other in a midtown coffee shop, and Amber said quietly, with the directness of a woman who loved her friend enough to say the uncomfortable thing, that Zara was going to hurt him. Zara wrapped both hands around her coffee cup and said yes, she knew. Amber said to make sure it was about him and not about her. Zara looked at her across the table and said it was about both of them, and that was perfectly fine. Amber nodded, sipped her coffee, and did not argue further, because she had known Zara James long enough to recognize a decision that had already been made. The engagement was reinstated. Marcus told his family. Zara told her mother Diane in Charlotte, who cried and immediately began planning the dinner she had been waiting to plan for 2 years. Zara let her plan every detail. She answered every question about venues and flowers and guest lists with calm attentiveness and a smile that did not waver once. At the office, Daniel Burns said nothing when he heard the news. He was near the coffee station when Amber mentioned it within earshot, which Amber would later deny was intentional, though it absolutely was. He poured his coffee, put the lid on, and walked back to his office without his face giving anything away. That afternoon he knocked on the glass panel of Zara's office. She looked up from her laptop. He stood in the doorway and said congratulations, 2 words, flat and clean, and she said thank you, 2 words, equally flat. He looked at her for 3 seconds with that more alert expression he reserved specifically for her, the one that meant he was processing more than the surface of whatever was in front of him. Then he nodded once and walked away. She watched the space where he had been for a beat longer than was professionally required, then went back to her laptop. She had a wedding to plan. And a plan inside the wedding. And she was not going to let anything interrupt the execution. The date was set for a Saturday in October. The venue was a renovated estate outside Atlanta with ivory florals and warm Edison lighting and a guest list of 112 people. Diane flew in from Charlotte and cried at the rehearsal dinner, which was for once in this story actually happy crying. Marcus was the most present the narrator had seen him since before any of this began. He was attentive and warm, and he looked at Zara the way a man looks at something he knows he nearly destroyed and cannot afford to lose again. He let him look. She smiled back. She was, in those weeks, the complete and convincing picture of a woman who had found her way back to something good and had chosen it deliberately. Amber helped with the exit. Not the betrayal. The logistics. There was a car arranged. A bag packed 3 days before the wedding and left at Amber's apartment. And there was a letter, 2 pages, written carefully over the course of an evening, that said everything Zara had chosen not to say out loud across those 4 months of performance. It was sealed in an envelope addressed to Marcus and left with the venue coordinator with instructions to deliver it 1 hour after the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The letter was honest in the way that letters can be when the person writing them does not have to watch the face of the person reading. It said she understood how it had happened. It said she did not hate him. It said she hoped he would become, for whoever came next, the man he had been performing at being for the past 4 months. It said goodbye in the cleanest language she had. It did not say where she was going. On a Saturday morning in October, the bridal suite of the estate was full of warm light and the quiet choreography of people making final adjustments to things that were already close to right. Zara James stood behind her daughter and fastened the last button of the dress, crying with the proud efficiency of a woman who had been looking forward to this moment for years. Zara looked at herself in the full-length mirror. Red hair pinned up with soft curls falling at the sides. A dress that fit her the way the plan fit her. She looked exactly like a bride. She looked exactly like the plan. She held her own gaze in the mirror and something in her face settled into a final, quiet certainty. Amber appeared at the door. Their eyes met in the mirror. Zara gave the smallest nod. Amber slipped out to make a phone call. 15 minutes before the ceremony, Zara asked her mother for 1 moment alone. Just 1 minute. Diane kissed her cheek and stepped out with everyone else, already composing herself for what was coming. The room went quiet. Zara stood alone in front of the mirror. She looked at the dress. She looked at her own face. She thought about the bare coffee table between them on the night Marcus came back. She thought about a tired face emoji on a phone screen in her kitchen at 6:58 in the morning. She thought about a shopping bag crumpling in her grip outside a little 5 Points coffee shop window. She thought about 40 minutes on a bathroom floor and a protein bar and a laptop and a campaign that closed and a letter on company letterhead with her name printed at the very top of it. She thought about a parking garage at the end of a long day and a man with black hair who said he noticed things, particularly about people he found interesting, and meant every word of it without requiring any defense. She set the bouquet down on the vanity. She picked up the small purse she had specifically chosen because it held exactly what she needed and nothing more. He walked to the door. She opened it. She took the back hallway that Amber had confirmed 3 days prior led to the side exit where the car was already waiting. She did not look back at the mirror. He did not need to. She already knew what she looked like. She looked like a woman who had made her decision and was walking in its direction. The car took her to a hotel in Midtown Atlanta. Not dramatic. Not far. Just quiet and clean and hers for the afternoon while the rest of the story sorted itself out. She sat on the edge of the hotel bed in her wedding dress, heels off, feet flat on the floor. Through the window, Atlanta went about its Saturday the way Atlanta always did, indifferent and bright and full of its own concerns. She called Amber. Asked if the letter had been delivered per the instructions. Amber said yes. 1 hour from now. Zara said okay. Amber asked how she felt. She sat with the question. The room was very quiet. She said she felt like herself. That it was the first time in 4 months she had felt entirely like herself.
Amber said good. Then she asked about Daniel. Zara was quiet for a moment before she said she did not know about Daniel yet. That it was a different conversation for a different day when she was not sitting in a hotel room in a wedding dress having just walked away from 112 people and an October estate. Amber said fair enough and then said she was proud of her. Zara said thank you and meant it in the complete way. She hung up. Sat in the quiet. Let herself feel the full weight and the full lightness of what she had just done because it was both of those things simultaneously, the way most true things are. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. She looked at the screen. Let it ring. Set it face down on the bedside table. She changed out of the dress. Ordered room service. Sat by the window and ate an actual meal, not a protein bar, and watched the city move below her and breathed. 2 weeks later she was back in the office. Burgundy blazer. Red hair up. Moving through the 12th floor of Strand Creative Group like the past 4 months were a chapter she had read, understood, and set down. On a Tuesday morning, Daniel Byrne passed her in the corridor. He was carrying his coffee and a physical folder of documents because he had always been slightly old-fashioned about certain things, and he looked at her the way he always looked at her, the more alert way, the way that meant he was reading past the surface of whatever she was presenting. He said good morning. She said good morning. He slowed just slightly, not enough to be called stopping but enough to make stopping available as an option. She stopped. He looked at her. She looked at him. The corridor was quiet for a Tuesday. He said he had heard. She said she imagined most people had. He asked plainly and specifically whether she was all right. Not the social version of the question. The version that was waiting for an actual answer. She looked at him. The black hair. The dark jacket. The folder of physical documents he had never apologized for carrying. The man who had sat across from her in a coffee shop when she was coming apart and had been the most honest presence in a season that had very little honesty in it. She told him she was better than all right. He looked at her for 2 more seconds and then said good, the way you say a word when it is the only one required and every other word would be less. He moved to keep walking. He said his name. He stopped. She asked whether that place he knew, the one with the good food and the actual quiet, was still an option. He turned around slowly. And the expression on his face was the full smile, not the small, controlled one from the elevator that had surprised even him, but the real one underneath it, the one that rearranged everything it touched. The one she had been keeping carefully, like a bookmark in the back of her mind through all of it. Through the reinstated engagement and the October estate and the back hallway and the hotel room and the wedding dress in a bag at Amber's apartment. She had held on to that smile the way you hold a door open when you plan to come back through it. He said it had always been an option. She said tonight then. He said tonight. She nodded, turned and walked toward her office without looking back. She was smiling before she reached the door. The real kind. The kind that belonged entirely and only to her. That is the thing about women like Zara James. They do not rush the ending. They do not accept the story that someone else decided to write for them. They sit with the grief and they close the campaign and they walk down the back hallway in the wrong direction at exactly the right time, and they find, eventually, the place where the plan and the truth arrive at the same address. Marcus received the letter at noon on a Saturday in October, in a venue full of people waiting for something that was not going to come. The narrator does not know precisely what his face did when he read it. But the letter was honest, and honest things, even the ones that arrive too late and in the wrong room, are the only ones that stay with a person in the way that genuinely changes them. The narrator hopes it changed him. The narrator thinks it probably did. Jessica is a different chapter. One the narrator will leave closed. Zara James sat across from Daniel Byrne at a restaurant in Midtown Atlanta on a Tuesday evening, red hair down, wearing something that was not a blazer for the first time in longer than she could immediately recall. And she ate an actual meal and told him the whole story from the beginning. He listened to every word with the complete attention of a man who had been paying attention to her since an elevator collision in a 12th floor hallway and had absolutely no plans to stop. At some point in the evening she asked him why he had sat down across from her in that coffee shop on that particular afternoon. Without asking. Without knowing what she was carrying. He said because she had looked like someone who should not be alone with that wall. She looked at him across the table and thought about the vision board on her laptop background, about the sticky note that said eat something that isn't a protein bar today, about a parking garage and a man who said he noticed things, particularly about people he found interesting, and meant it like a fact that required no further explanation. She said he had noticed a lot. He said she had made it easy. She said she really had not. He said she really had. She smiled, the real and full kind, the kind she had been keeping like a bookmark since the parking garage the evening the offer letter arrived. He said his name. He said yes. He said thank you for all of it. He looked at her across the table in the warm light of a Tuesday evening in a midtown Atlanta restaurant, with the unhurried certainty of a man who has been patient and knows exactly why, and he said they were just getting started. The narrator, who had been watching Zara James since 6 in the morning in Falcon sweats hitting a coffee mug without looking, who had watched her tuck feelings into corners of her chest and walk away from elevators without turning around and sit on park benches and cry on bathroom floors and build campaigns from rage and walk down back hallways in wedding dresses toward waiting cars, the narrator settled in over the closing shot of Atlanta at night, warm and indifferent and full of every kind of story, and concluded that this one had ended exactly where it was supposed to. Not where it was planned. Where it was supposed to. Subscribe to I Tell Stories right now. Hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who needed to watch a woman choose herself today, because that is exactly what you just watched. A woman who built toward something, lost the blueprint, rewrote it in her own handwriting, and arrived somewhere better than the original plan ever promised. That is the whole story. That is all of it. That is exactly enough.